In this video, we're going to be solving equations that have square roots or cube roots in them. In topic number one, we solved several basic equations that required square roots. We also briefly explored the solution to equations that involve cube roots. These problems give you more chances to practice solving equations that involve square roots and cube roots. Okay, so this is going to tie in nicely to the different types of equations that we've been solving lately. In example number one, we're going to solve each of the following equations for the value of x. All right. You're first going to need to isolate the variable term just as you would any equation that we have solved. And so looking at example A, the equation says 8x squared plus 2 equals 10. Remember that your equal sign divides the equation up into a left side and a right side, and our variable term in this example is on the left side. The variable term is 8x squared. But this term isn't isolated because there's a constant of 2 on the same side. We need to first remove this 2 so that the variable term 8x squared will be alone. And the way that I'm going to isolate 8x squared in this example is by subtracting 2 on each side. Okay, bring the equal sign straight down. And when you subtract 2 from each side, now your equation says 8x squared is equal to 8. All right. Now what we're going to need to do is to try to get the value of x. Right now, we have 8 times x squared. All right, so we're first going to try to get just x squared. 8 is multiplying x squared. All right, and so I'm going to divide each side by 8 as my next step. 8x squared divided by 8 is 1x squared, or just x squared. And 8 divided by 8 is equal to 1. So x squared is equal to 1. And now if I want just the value of x, I'm going to have to take the square root. All right, and if I do it on the left, I'm going to do it on the right. The square root of x squared is x, since x times x is x squared. And what number times itself is equal to 1? Well, it could be 1, but it could also be the number negative 1. 1 or negative 1 would be the answer here. 1 times 1 is 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is also 1. We could also write the answer like this: plus or minus 1, positive 1 or negative 1. Okay, so in an equation like this where we had to take the square root, there's actually going to be two answers to the problem. Looking at letter B, we have 5x squared minus 47 is equal to 453. Again, we have to isolate our variable term first, and the variable term here is 5x squared, and it's got this constant of negative 47 on the same side. So in order to get 5x squared alone, I'm going to add 47 to each side of the equation. When I do that, all right, equal sign comes straight down. Negative 47 plus 47 is 0, so the left side is just 5x squared. And on the right, 453 plus 47 is going to be 500. 5x squared equals 500. All right, but I don't want 5x squared. Let's first figure out what x squared is. All right, to get just x squared, I'm going to divide each side by 5. And 5x squared divided by 5 is 1x squared, or x squared. And it equals 500 divided by 5, which is 100. X squared equals 100. Now, in order to get the value of x, we need to do that square root. And again, we do that on each side. The square root of x squared is x. And the square root of 100, again, there's going to be two answers here. It could be 10, since 10 times 10 is 100. Or it could be negative 10. X equals 10 or negative 10. So again, we can write that as plus or minus 10. So again, two answers to this equation. In example C, we have 3/4 x squared plus 2 equals 5. Let's first get 3/4 x squared alone. We'll subtract 2 from each side. Equal sign comes straight down. 2 minus 2 is 0, so we have 3/4 x squared equals 5 minus 2, which is 3. Now I don't want 3/4 x squared, I just want 1x squared. Since my coefficient is a fraction, I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal, which is 4/3, and whatever I do on the left, I have to do on the right. Equal sign comes straight down. On the left, 4 simplifies with 4 to make 1. 3 simplifies with 3 to make 1. So all of this is just 1x squared, or x squared. And then on the right, 3 simplifies with 3 to make 1. 1 over 1 times 4 over 1, or 1 times 4. X squared equals 4. Now we'll take the square root of each side. The square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 4 could be 2 or negative 2. X equals plus or minus 2, positive 2 or negative 2. Now that we've seen a few examples where we've solved equations that have square roots to get to the answer, let's go ahead and practice a couple of more. In question 2a, we have 6x squared minus 4 is equal to 50. Let's first add 4 to each side so that we can isolate the variable term 6x squared. All right, negative 4 plus 4 is 0, so the left is just 6x squared, and 50 plus 4 is 54. Okay, but we don't want 6x squared, we want just 1x squared, so we'll now divide each side by 6. 6x squared divided by 6 is 1x squared. 54 divided by 6 is equal to 9, so x squared equals 9. Now take the square root of each side so we can get x's value. The square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 9 is 3 or negative 3. X could equal positive or negative 3. All right, 3 times 3 is 9. Negative 3 times negative 3 is also 9. Question B, 1/4 x squared plus 3 is equal to 7. Let's first subtract 3 from each side so that we can isolate the variable term. When we do that, we're going to still be left with the 1/4 x squared on the left, and 7 minus 3 is 4 on the right. Now we've got to try to get 1x squared. Right now our coefficient is a fraction, so we'll multiply by its coefficient, which is 4 over 1, or just 4. All right, equal sign comes straight down on the left. 4 simplifies with 4 here to create 1's. So this is 1 times x squared, which is just 1x squared. And on the right, 4 times 4 is 16. So we have x squared equals 16. Now take the square root of each side to get x's value. Square root of x squared is x. And the square root of 16 could be 4, or it could be negative 4. X equals positive or negative 4 as your solution to this equation. In our first topic, we also looked at cube roots. And if we had an equation that looked like x cubed is equal to 8, well, an equation that looks like this, where we're cubing the variable here, there's actually only one solution. There's not going to be two solutions like we saw in the previous examples where we had square roots involved. All right, x cubed equals 8 only has one solution, and that's when x is equal to 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 again is 8. All right, and 2 is the only answer to this problem. All right, negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, and then 4 times negative 2 again would be negative 8 and not positive 8. So when we cube a number, we have an odd number of factors. So a positive number cubed will be positive, and a negative number cubed will be negative. All right, let's see if we can check out a couple of these examples. In letter A, x cubed is equal to 343. We want to figure out what the value of x is going to be. So in order to do that, what we're going to do on each side, we're going to take the cube root. So I'm going to put a little 3 above it like that. That is the cube root symbol. All right, the cube root of x cubed is x because x times x times x is x cubed. All right, and then the cubed root of 343 is going to be 7. Okay, and we can verify our solution by doing a product. If you have 7 times 7 times 7, all right, that's 7 cubed. All right, and 7 times 7 is 49. And then if you do 49 times 7, you will get 343. And so there's only one answer to this equation. X is equal to 7. Why couldn't it be negative 7? Well, let's look at letter B here. Now x cubed is equal to negative 343. So again, to get the value of x, we're going to do the cube root on each side. And again, the cube root of x cubed is x. And this time, if you do the cubed root of negative 343, you will get negative 7. And again, if we verify that, negative 7 cubed, all right, make sure that that negative 7 is in parentheses. That means negative 7 times negative 7 times negative 7. If we multiply negative 7 and negative 7, we get positive 49. But now when we multiply 49 by negative 7, we get negative 343. So again, there's just one answer to this equation where I had to take the cube root in order to get the answer. So when you take the cube root, there's going to be one answer, but when you take a square root, there's going to be two answers. Now that we've done a nice review of cube roots, let's go ahead and solve some equations where the variable has been cubed. Be sure to isolate the variable term first, just like we have done in our previous equations. Here we have x cubed plus 9 is equal to 134. We've got to get x cubed alone. We've got to isolate it. So it's got this constant of 9 next to it. We're going to subtract 9 on each side. And that's going to get x cubed by itself on the left, since 9 minus 9 is 0. 134 minus 9 is 125. So x cubed equals 125. To get the value of x, then what we're going to have to do on each side is take the cube root. All right, and the cubed root of x cubed is x. The cubed root of 125 is going to be 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5 is 125. X equals 5. Again, only one solution here. In example B, x cubed equals negative 1,000. Our variable term has already been isolated. I don't have to add or subtract anything. I don't have to divide my variable term by anything, since my coefficient here is a 1. So all I'm going to do is just take the cubed root of each side to come up with my answer. The cubed root of x cubed is x, and the cubed root of negative 1,000 is going to be negative 10. All right, negative 10 times negative 10 times negative 10. Negative 10 times negative 10 is positive 100, and 100 times negative 10 is negative 1,000. So x here is going to equal negative 10. In example C, 2x cubed equals negative 54. All right, well, I don't want 2x cubed, I want just 1x cubed, so I'm going to start by dividing each side by 2. 2x cubed divided by 2 is our 1x cubed, and negative 54 divided by 2 is negative 27. X cubed equals negative 27. Now I'm going to take the cubed root on each side to get the value of x. The cubed root of x cubed is x, and the cubed root of negative 27 is negative 3. All right, so again, I can do negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, and 9 times negative 3 is negative 27. So again, there's one solution to this equation, and it's x equals negative 3. In our next set of problems, we've got some mixed practice. In some of the equations, the variable has been squared, while in others, it's been cubed. We're going to solve each of these equations. In question A, we have 7x squared minus 4 is equal to 171. What we're going to do is start by adding 4 to each side so that we can isolate the variable term. This is going to make our equation say 7x squared equals 175. All right, now we want just 1x squared instead of 7x squared, so we're going to divide each side by 7. 7x squared divided by 7 is 1x squared, and 175 divided by 7 is 25. So our equation says x squared equals 25. Now we'll take the square root of each side to get the value of x. Square root of x squared is x. The square root of 25, well, again, there's going to be two answers here. It could be 5, or it could be negative 5. X could equal positive or negative 5 in this example. With letter B, we have x cubed minus 10 equals negative 522. All right, we're going to first start by adding 10 to each side. And when you do that, well, again, that's going to isolate your variable term. We're just going to be left with x cubed, and it's going to equal negative 512. Okay, so now what we need to do is try to figure out, well, what number times itself 3 times is going to equal 512? Well, if we take the cubed root on each side, we can figure out what that number is. So the cubed root of x cubed is going to be x, and the cubed root of negative 512, well, I know it's going to be a negative number, and then I know that's going to end up actually being negative 8, because negative 8 times negative 8 is 64, and 64 times negative 8 is negative 512. One solution to this equation, x equals negative 8. All right, well, what about our next example? Now we have 2/3 x squared, and it's equal, or excuse me, 2/3 x squared plus 1 is equal to 7. All right, we're going to start by adding 1, or excuse me, subtracting the 1 that we're adding. All right, subtract 1 on each side. That's going to make our equation say 2/3 x squared equals 6. Now that we have a fractional coefficient here, the 2/3, we're going to multiply by its reciprocal, 3/2, and we're going to do that on both sides. Let's put the 6 over the 1 there. All right. Bring the equal sign straight down. On the left, 3 simplifies with 3 to make 1. 2 simplifies with 2 to make 1. So this is all now just 1x squared. And on the right, before we multiply, I can simplify with the 2 and the 6. 2 goes into itself once, 2 goes into 6 3 times. 3 over 1 times 3 over 1, 3 times 3 is 9. X squared equals 9. Now to get x's value, we need to do the square root. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 9 is going to be 3 or negative 3. X equals positive or negative 3 in this example. Finally, with letter D, we have x cubed plus 4 equals negative 60. We'll start by subtracting 4 on each side to get the variable term x cubed alone on the left. Negative 60 minus 4 is negative 64. Now to get the value of x, let's do the cubed root on each side. The cubed root of x cubed is x. The cubed root of negative 64 is going to be negative 4. Just one solution to this equation, and it's x equals negative 4.